Welcome to Double Axe Handle Smash podcast. My name is Johnny O, and with me today is the brand new co-host of Double Axe Handle Smash, Josh O. So we have Johnny O and Josh O. We are the O's.
Thanks for having me on, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
I really appreciate you being the new co-host. So it took me 4 years to come back with this show. I had this show 4 years ago, and it was starting to be a huge success. And my friend Metal Ed passed away during COVID. And so this episode and all future episodes will be dedicated to the memory of Edwin Rivera, Metal Ed. And before he passed away, he did tell me that he wants me to go on with the show and continue because it's my dream too. And this has been very hard the last 4 years, and not knowing how to do the editing and not knowing how to, I never knew how to do this stuff. So I went to school, CSB, Connecticut School of Broadcasting and Media Arts Center. And now I know how to do some of this stuff, and all of it, actually. I'm not always perfect, and I'm, trying the best I can. But yeah, I miss Edwin very much, and this is all dedicated to him. And we have a new format, and not only will we will be heavily talking about professional wrestling and have some upcoming guests on here, but we will also be discussing pop culture, retro pop culture, 80s, comic books, movies. I mean, I'm a big Back to the Future fan. Are you a Back to the Future fan?
I mean, I saw them when they first came out in the theaters and everything. It's been a long time, though, so it'll be interesting to rewatch it now, all these years later, and knowing that the time gap between the first Back to the Future movie takes place in the 50s when he goes back. We actually have a longer time span between now and the first movie coming out than they did between that movie and where it takes place in the 50s. If that made any sense.
It does, because wasn't Back to the Future 2 supposed to be 2015?
Yeah.
And we're supposed to have flying cars and all this stuff.
Right, but even in the first movie, because it takes place 30 years earlier, or not even 30 years, and it's been now over 40 since that first movie came out.
Wow, I feel really old.
Yeah.
You're older than me, a couple years.
I am. I was old enough to see the first Back to the Future in the theaters.
Wow. How about Star Wars? Are we a big Star Wars fan?
I was a huge Star Wars fan. Once again, where I was only 2 when the first movie came out, my parents have assured me that yes, they did take me at 2 years old to see it in the theaters. Wow. So in everything, and back then it got re-released in the theater as well. So I have seen all the Star Wars movies in theater.
That is awesome. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. Star Wars, Thundercats, Transformers, He-Man, even She-Ra. I mean, I love all that stuff. Smurfs. I mean, we're going to be discussing all this stuff and our favorite comic books. Right now I'm reading Transformers in the Energon universe, and a couple more things we'll discuss in a later episode. But what do you, besides wrestling, what do you do? What do you like doing?
I've always been a huge comic book fan ever since I was a little kid. I also am very big into the Energon universe right now. I also read a few other books. I read the Dick Tracy comic, the Phantom comic. I've always been, my gateway into the larger world of comic books was Captain America. And over the course of the last 40 plus years, that is the one book that I have picked up every single month. And even the other year when I sold a large part of my comic collection, I did not sell a single issue of Captain America. Yeah, I still have them all, even though I have them in other formats too. Like I have them in the Epic Collections, I have them in omnibuses. I'm never selling a single issue of Captain America. So I've got all that and everything, and I'm, I was really getting into buying a lot of the retro toys, trying to on eBay and everything. But during COVID, the toy market on eBay just went insane because too many of us who were in our 40s or now as I'm in my 50s, we had far too much time on our hands and a little too much money, and the toy market on eBay just went insane and prices just got ridiculous. So it kind of took me out of it. But if you, I have a finished basement in my house.
I remember coming into your house, and I remember seeing your collection, and I think it's the best collection I've ever seen of anyone.
Thank you. Thank you. I have but if you go into my workout room, I have all my He-Man figures, both retro and the new stuff and everything, because I'm a huge Masters of the Universe fan. I can't wait for the new movie to come out in June. I'm going to be there opening night and everything. So
yeah, down the road we'll have to do a He-Man Masters of the Universe episode.
Absolutely. I actually just rewatched the Toys That Made Us episode about Masters of the Universe.
That is a good episode.
Such a great episode.
Yeah.
And so sad that one of the creators of He-Man just recently passed away.
Yeah, and you couldn't even see the new movie.
Yeah.
That is sad.
So, and I will defend the Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe movie.
I liked it.
Here's my thought on it. It is a bad Masters of the Universe movie, but it is a very good, cheesy, late 1980s cheap-made sci-fi. And
right.
Everything. And in that, you can say that about certain, like the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie. It's a horrible Punisher movie.
I've never seen it.
Oh,
I heard it existed, but I never seen it.
It is a bad Punisher movie, but it is a perfectly good B 1980s action movie.
I'll have to check that out now.
I do own a copy, so we'll have to give that a watch.
We'll have to do maybe a watch along or something. Yeah.
So the other thing we're going to have you do is, because you told me you've never seen a James Bond movie.
Never seen a James Bond movie, no.
Okay. Now I'm going to resist the urge to get up and walk out right now. That is, I take moral offense to that. But we are going to have you watch a James Bond movie. I think we'll start you off with Daniel Craig's first movie, Casino Royale. Probably one of the best Bond movies ever.
Speaking about movies I've never seen, and you can all make fun of me because I have never seen Rocky or any Rocky movie until 2 months ago. 2 months ago was the very first time I seen the first Rocky movie, and I was brutally made fun of, especially by my boss at work. And so I finally watched it, and it wasn't bad. I don't know when I'll watch Rocky 2, but I know I'll keep going with this. Not sure about the Creed movies, but I think I'm going to just stick with Rocky for now.
Oh, you've got plenty of time. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. I would only skip over Rocky 5.
It's horrible.
I would skip that movie. It just fails on so many levels. So stop at Rocky 4 and, when he goes to fight Ivan Drago in Russia during the height of the Cold War. Or, as many of us know, Rocky actually ended the Cold War.
Oh.
Yeah, that movie is the reason why the Cold War ended.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
I think they talk about that on the TV show Cobra Kai.
Another good show, another good franchise.
I loved Cobra Kai. I loved Cobra Kai. That show was so over the top. It was just wonderful.
Upcoming episodes, we will have, like I said, guests from the professional wrestling world. This is mostly a professional wrestling podcast. However, like we were just talking about, we will talk about movies. We'll talk about the 80s, the time we grew up, and everything else. And there's going to be even some female themed episodes talking about Rainbow Bright and She-Ra and even maybe Hello Kitty, and we'll discuss all that. And we have some guests coming up, and I've said that several times. I'm not about to reveal that yet of who we have. but you guys are going to like it. You guys are going to like it a lot. And so stay tuned to the show. Now, I want to talk really quick about the wrestling and discuss our fandom and our the rest of this episode. I'd like to talk about how we got into wrestling and our knowledge and stuff like that. I always like to think of myself as an encyclopedia of wrestling, but talking to Josh here and getting to know him, he has told me stuff I have never heard of or known before, and he has familiarized me with the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express, which I know who they were. I just never got to watch NWA wrestling and Mid Atlantic and all those the Crockett promotions and stuff, and the early WCW. So Josh is really, really knowledgeable about that stuff. Do you want to take it away, Josh?
Yeah, no, I got into wrestling because, in the early 1980s, that was like the birth of Hulkamania. And I was aware of Hulk Hogan as a pop culture figure, but the first actual wrestling match I watched was on an episode of the A-Team. Because Hulk Hogan was there, the concept was he was friends with Mr. T's B.A. Baracus, and they actually showed clips of a match with him against Big John Studd. So that was the first time I saw wrestling. I had a friend, Matt, who was really into wrestling. He had all the posters on his wall and everything. And it just happened like one Saturday I'm home and I threw on wrestling and Mr. Wonderful's on there going how next week him and his best friend, Hulk Hogan, will be wrestling. And I'm like, oh, Hulk Hogan's going to be on my TV next week? I got to see that. Then the next week, him and Mr. Wonderful team up. They take on the Moondogs. All right, that was cool. And then they're like, and next week we're going to be back here and we're going to take on Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. Well, I have to watch that. And then that match was the one, it ended with Mr. Wonderful turning on Hulk Hogan. Hitting him with the short arm clothesline and then the pile driver. And I was hooked from that moment on.
And this is before the first WrestleMania, obviously.
No, this would be after. This is
Right.
In between WrestleMania 2 and 3. So this would be the summer of 1986. It kicked off financially. The house show run with Hulk Hogan and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff was one of the highest grossing house show runs of all time. It actually led to my first live wrestling event. I went to a taping of Saturday Night's Main Event in December of 86. The episode aired in January of 87. And the main event was Hulk Hogan and Mr. Wonderful in the old Big Blue Cage. And it's the infamous match where they were both escaping at the cage at the same time, and they both jumped down and they hit the ground at the same time, and the match got restarted. So very, very famous match, but an absolute great moment for me. Then I got my first wrestling magazine for Christmas, and this is going to seem strange that that's important. I open up that wrestling magazine, and I'm seeing all these other guys. And I'm seeing, wait, who's this other guy, this blonde guy with a big belt who's claiming to be the world champion? And it's like, oh, that's Ric Flair. And everything. And I remember going,
Is that your first time ever hearing of who Ric Flair is?
Yep. First time hearing who Ric Flair was. First time seeing a picture of the Road Warriors in that magazine. And it's like, holy crap. These big, big guys with the face paint and the spikes. It's like, wow. And it's an image that just leaps off the page. And I remember going, Matt, who are these guys? And he's like, oh, that's the NWA. And Josh, their wrestling is even better than WWF's. And it's like, all right, that's not possible. So, but then in 87, I do start watching the NWA. And, from that point on, it was great. The late 80s were actually a really good time to get into wrestling because you had a very strong presence on Saturday mornings with the syndicated shows because you had the two WWF shows, Superstar and Challenge. You had the NWA syndicated show, and you had World Class's syndicated show. And then during the week, Monday through Friday, ESPN's in its infancy. and they
AWA?
yeah, ESPN, because they needed content, they had reruns of the AWA and World Class. So I was able to see like several years worth of old wrestling. Like I was able to see the Von Erichs Freebirds feud. In the AWA, I was able to see Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, who were then the Midnight Rockers. I got to see their chase for the world tag titles in everything, and them winning the belts for the first time. So it was all very cool, and it was a great time to be a wrestling fan and everything. And then, on Monday nights, you had primetime wrestling, and they'd show a lot of the house show stuff where you could see a lot of the Bulldogs against the Hart Foundation. You had the Saturday night's main event specials and everything, and that's where you could see Hulk Hogan defend the championship and everything. So it was a really great time to be a wrestling fan, and a really great gateway drug in. And so I'm actually there for the birth of the pay-per-view era, with WrestleMania 3. I remember getting that on pay-per-view, and that was huge and everything. And in a future episode, I really want to dive into 1980s WWF and NWA, the Crockett territory, and everything, and go over all of that, because I'm so intrigued by that time period. I have a lot of fond memories, a lot of nostalgia, but I also think it's got a lot of great storylines, and a lot of the backstage stuff that was going on in Crockett that would lead to him selling to Ted Turner is just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, actually, on our first iteration of the show, we had our guest, Bill Alfonso, and I can reveal that he will be back on the show. He used to work for NWA, and he was a referee during that match with Lex Luger versus Bruiser Brody in a steel cage.
Oh, I will be asking him about that, because
but he's going to be coming back on the show. I can reveal that, and he is a wealth of knowledge to talk to about all that. He was refereeing the WWF as well as the handler for Giant Gonzalez backstage. And, of course, manager of RVD, Taz, and Sabu, the late Sabu, may he rest in peace. So
I'll be looking forward to asking him questions about his refereeing days.
Yeah.
Because as I rewatch 1980s wrestling, I see him in the ring for all those great matches. Like, I think he might have been the official in one of the Ric Flair Ricky Steamboat matches. I'm not quite sure.
I think
on
he
that,
was.
but he was
I remember
there
seeing
around that time.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share about your childhood or anything like that? And
I'm sure
up wrestling?
we'll get into that in future episodes. But I'm really looking forward to talking about like 80s and early 90s wrestling and everything, and that'll be great.
Yeah, and really quick, before we end this, we have a few minutes left, and I want to just quickly go over how I became a fan. Is when I was young, I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me. He hates wrestling now, but when he was younger, he knew who Roddy Piper was and Big John Studd, and we had those little wrestling trading cards, and they were scattered all over the house, and we had a farm, and they're over the farmhouse. Sometimes you find them on the porch, and but I remember looking at a card. I'm like, "Who's this?" And my brother would tell me, "That's Roddy Piper," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So he's like kind of the first name I've ever heard of, and then they're wrestlers, and then we watched I don't know, I might have my timeline wrong, but the Rockin' Wrestling cartoon show. So we watched that, and then I think the beginning they had like Hulk Hogan and Mean Gene introducing the episodes, and Hulk Hogan would always make Mean Gene drink this milkshake or something that had like raw eggs and everything, and I remember an episode where Andre the Giant was trying to find a car, and they put him in a bulldozer, and it was just funny. But I think you can watch those on YouTube. But I think my first big memory I remember, and I told this on the old show, I heard Vince McMahon come on TV. I didn't know it was Vince McMahon at the time, and I never knew he was the owner until somewhere in the early 90s. I knew, someone told me. but because somebody gave me a book, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and then he told me Vince owns it, and I didn't know that. But I in the '80s though, growing up, Vince McMahon came on the air, and I remember hearing his voice, "Showcase of the Immortals," and it just somehow like they always showed the Greek gods, and they showed these structures and the Colosseum and everything like that, and because I think they were promoting the Colosseum home video as well. So I remember seeing that, and then I remember watching. I was at my grandparents' house, and I remember watching Saturday night's main event, a little bit of it. My grandfather would switch back and forth between that and something else. And I remember seeing, it was later in the 80s, I think Miss Elizabeth, the Macho Man was getting beat up, and Miss Elizabeth went in the back and got Hulk Hogan. And I think Macho Man was getting beat up by either the Boss Man or I think it was Heart Foundation or somebody. Or
Okay, so the initial forming of the Mega Powers,
yeah,
it was the season premiere of Saturday Night's Main Event that year, in 1987.
okay,
It was Macho Man, who had not yet become a babyface. He was kind of a tweener at that point, taking on the Honky Tonk Man, who over the summer had beaten Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for the belt in a huge upset. So Macho Man's about to win the match. The Hart Foundation came in and jumped Macho, causing the disqualification. Because at the time, the Hart Foundation and Honky Tonk Man were all managed by Jimmy Hart, so they were all in the same stable. So the Hart Foundation and Honky Tonk Man, they're beating up Macho Man. Honky Tonk Man goes to grab the guitar. He's got the guitar. The Hart Foundation's holding him. He's about to level Macho. Elizabeth steps in the way. She's like, no, please don't. And Honky Tonk Man did the unthinkable. He actually shoved Miss Elizabeth to the ground. And people are just, somebody just laid their hands on Elizabeth. We were outraged.
weren't they chanting Hogan's name though?
Yeah, they probably were. I know on the TV they were, but now you don't know if that's something because Saturday Night's Main Event was recorded that they piped in afterwards. But either way, she goes running off to the back, and then she brings out Hulk Hogan. And yes, the crowd, if you watch that crowd and that when they cut to the wide shots, that crowd is losing their minds. And Hogan comes down, and him and Macho Man clear the ring, and they've got their backs turned to each other, but they accidentally back up into each other, and then they turn and they both got their raised fists, because they had feuded over the belt, not, just like a year or so earlier. And then Macho Man's like, no, thanks for coming out to help, and he extends the hand. And that's when,
Is that famous handshake?
Yep, the famous handshake and everything, and, the Mega Powers are formed, and Macho Man solidified his babyface turn. And like in that one moment, Macho Man became the number 2 babyface in that company.
All right. Yeah. So I remember that moment, and I meant to do that just to show how much knowledge you had.
I actually was just rewatching the Best of Saturday Night's Main Event DVD set, and they actually had that on there.
Oh,
so it's fresh in my memory.
Yeah. I don't know. I had a 46-year-old brain fart. I don't know what happened. I'll have to take that out in the editing. But yeah, I remember that, and I remember I didn't watch any pay-per-views. I didn't even know what a pay-per-view was yet. And what year was that? 87, 86?
87 would have been the first pay-per-view. Before they did like WrestleMania was on closed circuit.
Okay.
88 87 WrestleMania 3. At least I know in our area where I was living in Enfield that we had just gotten cable.
Yeah.
Like within like the last year, and that was like the first major pay-per-view and everything, and that was huge.
But when was the Macho Man getting beat up by the Hart Foundation? What year was that?
That was fall of 87. So
87.
that would, because 1987 WrestleMania 3, that's him versus Steamboat.
Okay.
In one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, where Steamboat won the belt from Macho Man.
Okay. So I did that. I watched that, and then I would start watching Saturday Morning Superstars here and there. I wouldn't understand when to put it on. My parents never helped me with that. But I would go, I think my first pay-per-view I ever got, I would watch the pay-per-views with my neighbor. My neighbor Jesse always got the pay-per-views at his house, so I'd started watching them from there. My first one that we paid for, my mom paid for, was the 1992 Royal Rumble, which I think is the greatest Royal Rumble of all time.
Absolutely.
And made most of all those people in that show rest in peace. I mean, we'll talk about that in another episode. So and then I was off, and then I would tape every episode of wrestling since 92 is the late 92. I started taping it, and I had it recorded on VHS all the way up, and understand how many VHS tapes I would have to go through.
I was the exact same. I had all these different wrestling tapes, like piled up.
And then when Nitro and Raw came on, they were head-to-head, WCW versus WWE, and I would switch back and forth while recording, so it would be very annoying watching it back because it would just go back and forth. And so I just stopped recording stuff.
Well, so what I would do is I would alternate weeks. One week I would record one episode and watch the other show live, and then I would do the opposite the next week.
See, I didn't know how to do that. I just knew how to watch something as I recorded it. I never knew how to do
We had enough
the other
TVs in my house that we could get away with that because I had cable and a VCR up in my bedroom. So I would, in the bedroom, I'd record, and then downstairs in the living room, I would watch the other show live.
Okay. Well, on that note, we will stop and join us next time for Double Axe Handle Smash podcast. We are still on the reformation of the show, and we will have another episode back to you soon, and then we'll get more steady on this. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the show. Join us on our YouTube channel, Double Axe Handle Smash, as well as